That's what I'll do. I will tell you a story.
My planet's gone. It's dead. It burned like the Earth.
I lied to you. Because I liked it. I could pretend. Just for a bit, I could imagine they were still alive.
I'm a Time Lord. I'm the last of the Time Lords.
I'm the last of the Time Lords. Fantastic! Oh, fantastic!
They died. They all died. Do you know who that leaves? Me! It's taken me all these years to realize the laws of time are mine, and they will obey me! And I am yours!
You chose was a promise. What was the promise?
Never cruel or cowardly.
Remember, hate is always foolish, and love is always wise.
The last few years have not been kind for Doctor Who. Doctor Who has been treated with such disrespect and animosity that the show's ratings have been in a massive downward spiral for years now. Stephen Moffat was the showrunner from 2010 to 2017, a whopping 7 years, during which time he had control over two different doctors, Matt Smith and my personal favourite, Peter Capaldi. However, the quality of Moffat's writing varied throughout the 6 or 7 years that he was in charge, with several series made by him and several specials made by him. Series 6 is where everybody started to get worried, with the story of River Song and how she was the woman who killed the Doctor.
Hello, sweetie.
What have you done?
While the series itself has some incredible episodes like A Good Man Goes to War, God Complex, and The Girl Who Waited, all of which beg the question that is a running theme throughout the series, which is traveling with the Doctor borderline toxic?
You're turning me into you.
But then you also have the bigger theme of the Doctor's death and how far he's willing to go to avoid it. It really harkens back to an older story back in Series 4, or the specials in Series 4, where the Doctor is trying so very hard to avoid dying, leading to the Time Lord Victorious, which is a fantastic story. Now you're probably wondering, these all sound like beautiful concepts, and if the episodes themselves are really good, then what's the worry? Well, you would be wise to ask. The problem comes with the final 2 episodes. It's here where the story decides to take a nosedive off a cliff and then give itself a concussion. Never mind the fact that they brought James Coggan back, but the second to last episode is a straight up filler episode. The Doctor is distracting himself because he doesn't want to die, so he helps thwart a Cybermen invasion. Which in itself is a decent concept, but the entire idea of the Doctor's death and his fear of dying is a complete afterthought of the episode. But this is where I've got to give props to the cast and crew on this show, because whoever decided to commit to this joke is a psychopath. Working with children is hard enough, especially babies this young. But getting that baby to shush on command is impossible. The concept of the Doctor distracting himself with menial tasks is a great concept and very consistent with the character, again harkening back to Time Lord Victorious. The bigger problem with this is that it's the second to the last episode, which leaves the conclusion feeling rushed and unsatisfying. Then there's also the Doctor, the Widow, and the Wardrobe. an absolutely boring Christmas special, and I avoid it every year. Which brings us to Series 7, which until the last couple of years was considered the worst series in the new era of Doctor Who. I reserve that seat for Series 12. Series 7 is a very strange series, because it was split up into two halves. The first half dealt with the departure of Amy and Rory, the best companions in Doctor Who history, fight me on it. And here's a controversial opinion right here. I kind of rate this story arc. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not perfect. Dinosaurs on a Spaceship is a bullshit episode with no creativity, and it just so happens to be a Chris Chibnall episode, so gold standard right there. This episode had all the problems that would be major problems in the Chibnall era. It has too many characters with almost no reason for them to be there, other than the concept of wouldn't it be cool if Nefertiti was on a spaceship? Cool, yes, in concept, but you've got to execute that with some excellent precision in writing, but you did not, because she is a nothing character in that episode. Nefertiti and the Hunt's boring as hell. That didn't need to be there. You could have just had it Amy, Rory, his father. That would have been enough. Brian is his name. That would have been enough. But no, you had to put in Nefertiti and this other chick. It really doesn't work because there are too many characters, and it is critical to Chibnall's era and why his era failed. The other episodes are really cool episodes. Except for Asylum of the Daleks. Fuck that episode. Some fumble at the finish line, like The Power of Three. Again, another Chris Chibnall episode. But The Power of Three, A Town Called Mercy, and The Angels Have Taken Manhattan are some of my favorites in the Moffat era. I especially love the moment where the Doctor is considering leaving a man to die a horrible death, and Amy is the one who shows him his humanity again.
See, this is what happens when you travel alone for too long. Well, listen to me, Doctor. We can't be like him. We have to be better than him.
Best fucking companion ever, I'm telling you. And this all culminates in The Angels Have Taken Manhattan, where Amy finally chooses to let the Doctor go and sacrifices herself to be with Rory. She starts her entire run by running away with her Raggedy Doctor away from Rory, and ends it by running towards Rory. I love that so very much.
Raggedy Man! Goodbye!
I cannot say enough good things about this episode. It is so cool. The angels are so terrifying in this episode. River is a bit hit or miss, but this brings us to the Impossible Girl storyline, which introduces Clara Oswald. This story has its perks, but it's not my favorite. In fact, this is the half of the series where I start feeling Series 7 fatigue. It's a really boring section of the series, and not a lot happens. I think The Rings of Akaten, Cold War, and The Journey to the Center of the TARDIS are perhaps the most fun this half gets, but episodes like Crimson Horror, Nightmare in Silver, and the god-awful Name of the Doctor are really what nail this coffin shut.
Doctor, what is your name?
And all of this is disappointing because it was leading up to the 50th anniversary of Doctor Who, which is a fan-fucking-tastic episode.
Oh, yes, that is good. That is brilliant. Oh, I'm getting that too. That is brilliant.
This was a massive love letter to the fans of the show, both old and new. It showed David Tennant, my second favourite Doctor, John Hurt, Matt Smith, all joining together to save Gallifrey. It is a great story. I love it so much. But here is my second most controversial opinion. I don't like the fact that they saved Gallifrey. I kind of wish they had left it the way it was. It severely undermines a whole lot of the story leading up to this story, and they genuinely had no idea what the fuck they were going to do with Gallifrey once they did save it, so much so that Chibnall was like, well, everybody liked it when Gallifrey was blown up, so I'm going to do it again for no fucking reason.
Oh, you see, that's where everybody's wrong. It's all one title. Gallifrey Falls.
No!
I should say, I did like it when they saved Gallifrey at first, because it was like Pandora's box. They had a whole bunch of story potential with saving Gallifrey that it could have been a fantastic story that they were going for, but they just didn't do anything with it. Other than the Time Lords being dicks at the end of Series 9, which is cool, they didn't really come back after that until Chibnall decided to blow them up again. The whole thing of saving Gallifrey is rendered inert because they undo it a few years later. Because the new idea was that Gallifrey wasn't destroyed, but now lost, and it's up to the Doctor to find it, is a brilliant way to set up what's about to happen, which is what the ending of The Day of the Doctor is suggesting, with the brilliant return of Tom Baker as the curator, which somehow brilliantly foreshadowed what was going to happen 10 years later.
And in years to come, you might find yourself revisiting a few, but just the old favourites, eh?
And then the story of the 11th Doctor comes to a beautiful conclusion in The Time of the Doctor, which is my personal favourite Christmas special, and I watch it every year. Little side note, one of my favourite things to do with The Time of the Doctor is to put it on at 11 o'clock, 11 p.m. on the dot. Then by the time that it hits 12 o'clock, he will have regenerated into the 12th Doctor. You're welcome.
And now it's time for one last bow. Like all your other selves. 11's hour is over now. The clock is striking 12s.
Yeah, and this is the point where 14-year-old me got into Doctor Who. I started watching just after the 11th Doctor had regenerated into the 12th Doctor, so soon after the Time of the Doctor, just before Deep Breath. I had known of Doctor Who's existence beforehand, but hadn't watched it at all. I knew bits and pieces. This scared the absolute shit out of me when I was a kid.
Burn with me.
Well, if you want to help.
Burn with me. Burn with me.
I had no idea about the lore of the show. I didn't know what a Dalek was. I had no idea what the fuck the TARDIS even was. But I did know that the Doctor was able to change faces, and that the guy who played Barty Crouch Jr. was the Doctor at one point. So soon after the Time of the Doctor had come out, my brother started watching Doctor Who, and I sat down next to him to watch it. My life was never the same again. I still remember being just as awestruck as Rose when she first entered the TARDIS. The same feeling crept over me when Christopher Eccleston regenerated so soon into the show, and then that guy that played Barty Crouch Jr. popped his head out, and I was instantly in love. David Tennant very quickly became my favourite Doctor. Granted, at the time, I thought he was the second Doctor, not the 10th. And at the time, he was the second Doctor I had been exposed to, so shenanigans. Matt Smith was cool, but I could never get into how childish he was the majority of the time. Even now, I go back and watch his series, I still can't get into it. But his darker side shows so much more now that I'm older, and I can see it now and just understand what they were going for back then, that it adds a whole new light to that particular section of the show. But when this old man popped his head out and took over the TARDIS, at the time I didn't like it because the Doctor I knew, he was always young. He was always just a young man, just on an adventure. I didn't realize that he was an old man. But the deeper I dived into the lore of the Doctor, the more I loved Capaldi as the Doctor. The way I envision the Doctor in my head is Peter Capaldi, and the way that he portrays him.
Team determined to play, so it seems that I must play mine. The man that stops the monsters.
He is as fierce as a warrior, but as kind as an old man, and as wise as somebody who has traveled the universe for thousands of years and is getting wary of his old age. And Moffat has a brilliant way of showing regeneration through the eyes of a companion, and therefore the eyes of us, the viewer, because it's easy for us to see the Doctor as just like different actors, different people who have played him. But to him, they are him. Yesterday he woke up as Matt Smith, today he woke up as Peter Capaldi. Which is why I love this scene so much.
You can't see me, can you? You look at me and you can't see me. Have you any idea what that's like?
Because it gives us an insight into the Doctor's soul. We've known the Doctor to have many faces and many lives, but very few companions have seen it themselves. And understandably, some might freak out when they see it.
Please, just see me.
I don't think fully works with Clara because she has literally seen every version of the Doctor's face. She has even interacted with them properly beforehand. And in the literal last episode, she was begging the Doctor to regenerate, so much so that she went to the Time Lords and begged them to let him regenerate. Did you forget about that, Moffat? Despite a bit of a glaring issue with how this moment came about, the moment itself sets up a really interesting story for the Doctor. Because the Doctor has had so many faces and so many lives, it's slowly been chipping away at who the Doctor really is and why he left Gallifrey in the first place. He's starting to feel like a helpless wanderer with nowhere to go. Which is why I think it's an incredibly beautiful move to have this Doctor team up with the first Doctor for his final outing, which reignites the sense of adventure in both men and gives the 12th Doctor a what the hell, and allows himself to regenerate in the final episode.
Well, I suppose one more lifetime won't kill anyone.
Which then brings us to the Chibnall era. Now, I have already made a video describing how much I really don't like this era of Doctor Who. I really don't like the video because I was way too harsh, way too malice, way too callous. All the malicious words that I could come up with. It's really not my favorite video. But the feelings that I have about the era are more or less the same. I'll just word it a little better. But to summarize my feelings on the Chibnall era, I think it's dull, overly serious, and underperformed series. The drama is nonsensical, the characterization is non-existent, and the plot is ludicrous. But the biggest sin this series commits is when it tries and unfortunately succeeds in completely changing the Doctor Who lore, and most importantly, the lore of the Doctor themselves. Basically, in Series 12, in an episode titled The Timeless Children, it is revealed that the Doctor wasn't born on Gallifrey, but is from another dimension and is far older than we had previously known in the series. For 50 years, the Doctor was a highborn Gallifreyan who got fed up with the principles of his own people, so he stole a TARDIS with his granddaughter and flew away.
I'm the Doctor, I'm a Time Lord from the planet Gallifrey. I stole a time machine and ran away, and I've been flouting the principal law of my own people ever since.
This makes the Doctor instantly relatable because everyone has problems with the society that they currently live in. Everyone has that desire to want to jump in their car and just leave. They can't because they have other responsibilities, but that's why it's so fun to watch the Doctor. It makes the Doctor feel small because to his people, he's nobody. He's literally just an average Joe that just jumped into his car and then just drove off. But now, the Doctor is basically just a fucking god who is the essence of regeneration, and the Time Lords originally kidnapped him, tortured him, and then stole the ability of regeneration and then implanted it into themselves. Granted, that's a cool idea, but it doesn't work given the Doctor. While the Time Lords haven't always been necessarily kind to the Doctor, they have always held him in high regard. So much so that they have made him Lord President, literally the leader of the planet, several times throughout his life. You wouldn't make the person that you tortured for years, then stole their ability, and then built your society upon that, and then make them leader of the planet. It just wouldn't happen. It just doesn't make any sense. Because you know why? Because if that person then decides to look into the history of the Time Lords and realizes what they had done and who he actually is, wouldn't it then be a fear that he would then decide to, burn the planet down? It's not exactly like he hasn't done that before. He has literally destroyed entire civilizations for less. This is also the same Doctor that literally laughed in Davros's face as he made him blow up his own planet.
Conquer the galaxy, unimaginable power, unlimited rice pudding, etc., etc.
This is not somebody you want as your leader if you fucking tortured them and then made them the literal foundation of your society. It doesn't work. It would work, however, if you then pivot it a little bit into the Master rather than the Doctor. The Time Lords have always had disdain for the Master. They have always treated him like shit. They have literally killed him before, brought him back to life, tortured him. They have done so much to this poor guy. They brought him back for the Time War, so much so that he was like, fuck this, and then we run away.
You are diseased, albeit a disease of our own making. No more.
It would make more sense if it was the Master. It makes no sense if it's the Doctor. But, that all being said, once that particular episode came out, the fan backlash was enormous. And you would have thought that they would have pulled the Moffat and just sort of unwrote it a little bit, either not acknowledging it or giving it a one-word sentence to just sort of, yeah, that actually didn't happen. Or that's actually not how it is. Like they did with Series 10, when Peter Capaldi's Doctor gets asked, it was like, oh, why'd you leave Gallifrey? He's like, yeah, just goes. And then he doubles down on it later in Twice Upon a Time with the first Doctor, and Bill being like, oh, why'd you run away? He's going on this whole speech about, like, good and evil, and why does good always prevail, and why does evil always lose? That is more interesting than the hybrid storyline. Now, I will give you props, Moffat, because I didn't really like the hybrid storyline, but the fact that you were willing to undo it yourself, props to you, sir. I love you for that. But when the Flux came out, i.e. Series 13, they did the exact opposite. They completely doubled down on the Timeless Child story and concocted a web of garbage that even the most talented of writers would struggle to unweave. Great.
And for my next trick...
But it was around this time where we received the information that Russell T Davies was coming back to write the next series, to head the next era of Doctor Who, which had me so excited. I was like, bruh, they're literally bringing back the king of Doctor Who. I haven't even talked about the first era of Doctor Who yet in this video, but Series 1 through 4 are some of the best series that I have ever sat through. I even like Series 3. I think Series 3 is a very underrated series. Series 1 is probably my favorite. I love Christopher Eccleston as the Doctor. Series 4 is probably my second favorite, and then vice versa. It just keeps going. So when Russell was announced to be coming back, I was excited, but I was also worried, because this screamed of a Terminator Dark Fate moment. When Terminator Genesis failed, it literally just, it bombed so hard, nobody wanted to watch it, nobody liked it, and then they were like, hey, James Cameron's coming back for the next one as the producer, but that's exciting, right? And then everybody's like, oh my god, James Cameron's coming back! And then they were like, oh well, we also got Linda Hamilton coming back, and everybody's like, oh my god, you got Linda Hamilton! And then the movie comes out, and it's Doghouse, so then everybody's like, bruh, you literally just wasted our time. This was not even worth it. James Cameron coming back meant nothing. Linda Hamilton coming back meant nothing. Even Arnold Schwarzenegger couldn't say this. I was praying that this was not the case with the 60th anniversary of Doctor Who, when they also announced that David Tennant was coming back as the Doctor. And by George of the Jungle, they did deliver some beautiful Doctor Who. I do have my problems with the specials, but my dude, you have no idea how much I've been craving just fun Doctor Who. It has been so long since we've had any Doctor Who that was any kind of fun, and I was just living it up with the Star Beast. Holy fuck, it was so cool. It was so nice. The pacing was great. The acting was fantastic. The directing was beautiful. The writing was gorgeous for the most part. And oh my god, just... Sorry, I'm about to be arrested. It just warmed my two hearts. Like, it really did. I was so stoked. When the first trailer dropped, I literally said to myself, this was more intense than anything in the last 3 series. The Flux, Series 12, Series 11. I had not felt more excited in those 2.5 minutes in that trailer than I ever did in 40 hours of Doctor Who beforehand. Holy shit. It was literally some of the best shit that I had seen in a while. But granted, the episode was relying on the pre-established connections that most of us have to these characters.
But it was just like putting on a pair of very comfortable old boots.
But I must admit, the ending of the episode is a little contrived. Because the episode is following the end of Series 4 where the Doctor wipes Donna's memory in order to save her, we don't really get a proper moment of the Doctor struggling to like turn off the dagger drive. Like he's going back and forth and he's like trying to do it himself and he's making some witty remarks of like, oh, I don't need to be able to use the Sonic. Oh, I don't even need like half the room, so I can just do it with half the room. It's fine. We don't get a moment big enough where the Doctor's like, fuck, I literally, like, I have no time. And there is literally one way that would have fixed this. If you had added a countdown to this moment, it would have made it so much more compelling. Because we as the audience have knowledge of like how long that this is going to take. And if the Doctor is like, oh, I can get it done in like 2 minutes, and like the destruction level just keeps amping up, and then he's like, oh, I've got 2 minutes, but the countdown says 1. I can't actually finish this in time. And then he looks behind, he sees Donna, and he's like, shit. But nevertheless, I still got chills. And my eyes even got a little watery when the Doctor was giving his best Baron Zemos' speech.
Желание.
Westerly.
Живой.
Pelican.
12.
Dreams.
Развед.
Tornado.
5.
Cliff tops.
9.
Andante.
Dobre качественный.
Grief. Fingerprint.
Возвращение на родину.
Susurration.
1.
Sparrow. Dance. Mexico.
Грузовый вагон.
Binary. Binary. Binary.
So that's...
I gave away my money.
And the reason that this is so effective is for a couple reasons. Reason 1, above everything, Catherine Tate and David Tennant are amazing actors. I was in love with their acting in this scene. It was like they haven't spent a second apart from each other. Genuinely, I love them so much. And reason 2, the greater context. This version of the Doctor is much older than the last time we saw David Tennant as the Doctor. It's not like it's 10 again, it's the next Doctor. Which means that this is a Doctor who has lost Amy and Rory, who has lost Clara, who has lost River, who has lost Bill. And the events of the Flux, even though I don't like it, all happened to this Doctor, which means he has seen an enormous level of destruction, an enormous level of death, all because of him. And this moment he just wears it so well on his face. Like, look at this gorgeous face. Like, oh my god, this man is a great actor. Holy fuck.
I'm just not one.
No, you are not! Why does it have to be this?
But the conclusion to the Metacrisis story, I think, was an incredible way of dealing with it without it feeling unnatural. Having passed down to Donna's daughter was a beautiful way of including Rose into the story. I don't like how forced that the final moment is, where they're basically just mocking the Doctor for being male. But I think everything comes with its negatives, and I don't hate the moment. I think it's just weird and I think it's annoying, but it still works for the most part. And man, I also adore the 14th Doctor's look. It looks like the 10th Doctor's look, just with a bit of a spin on it. And the screwdriver, oh my god, the sonic screwdriver in this. This is literally my favorite sonic screwdriver ever made. I really don't like 11's Sonic. Like, I could never get into it. It was too flashy, it was too overdone. But this one is so well utilized. Like, it's not a crutch for the Doctor. It's literally just him using it to get himself out of situations and then just putting it away. He doesn't need it anymore. The 11th Doctor and the 13th Doctor both overly relied on the sonic screwdriver, and that is another reason why I couldn't get into the 11th Doctor, and ditto for the 13th. I think the Sonic should only ever be used sparingly. It should never be something that the Doctor can just use and then it would just get him out of a situation. It shouldn't be like that. Here is probably my third most controversial opinion. I love the new TARDIS interior, but I think it's too fucking big. Maybe this is my old man cynicism like creeping in, but I don't need the TARDIS interior to be this big. In my personal opinion, the best interior for the TARDIS was 12's. I loved how alien yet lived in it felt. Like somebody had spent so many years just living in that place. But, that being said...
Hey, look, the round things. I love the round things. What are the round things? No idea.
I love how it harkens back to old Doctor Who, and I love how Donna just ruins it immediately.
This is amazing! What's gonna go wrong? Oh my god,
like within seconds of the Doctor getting a new TARDIS, Donna literally just spills coffee on it and it just blows up. And this brings us to Wild Blue Yonder, perhaps the most anticipated episode of the specials, mainly because of how secretive everyone was with this episode. We all knew what might happen in the Star Beast and the Giggle, but no one really knew what was going on with Wild Blue Yonder. Russell T Davies even came out apologizing for how secretive they were, because it was kind of misleading for the most part. People looked at Wild Blue Yonder and they were like, I mean, if you're being this secretive, like surely Matt Smith and Peter Capaldi are returning in this episode. But sadly, that was not the case. In fact, as Davis put it, it's the most simple of the three.
I think that might have had an unfortunate effect. I think everyone's expecting Matt Smith and Peter Capaldi and the ghost of William Hartnell riding on the back of the Garm, but also because this is actually the simplest one of the lot. If you describe this episode, so they arrive on a station and they arrive on a spaceship and they meet evil versions of themselves. That's it.
One sentence to explain them all. That's literally all that happens. And I can see why people would be disappointed. And I certainly was at first, because I was kind of jarred with the change of pace and almost nothing happening in this episode other than the Doctor meeting an evil version of himself and Donna. But I kind of liked it. I love it even. I think the change of pace was so necessary for this episode. It slows down, but not so much of the Chibnall era, but it slows down enough for the characters to breathe and develop. Scenes like this, where the Doctor and Donna nearly have a fight because the TARDIS runs away, are some of my favourite moments between the two characters. The Doctor literally just lost his home and his Sonic, literally everything that he values in life, and they all just ran away. He's literally on his own. He has nothing now. And Donna is understandably overwhelmed and is lashing out, which nearly causes the Doctor to lash out at her. But you can see how much the Doctor loves Donna, because he stops himself from lashing out and then immediately turns to emotional support for Donna once they have taken a moment to breathe.
Oh my god, where are we?
It's another moment where it just highlights how incredible these two are as actors. It just goes to show that a smaller cast is better than a massive one. Once the Doctor and Donna realize that they are stuck, they start exploring the ship and eventually find out that they aren't alone on the ship. And I love how this is done, because most of the time when there's a scene between the two characters, you're not always sure who is who, which makes for some incredible storytelling. And it even manages to put the flux in a context that nearly made me cry.
It destroyed half the universe because of me. We stand here now on the edge of creation, a creation which I devastated. So yes, I keep running, of course I do. How am I supposed to look back on that?
It wasn't your fault.
I know!
Because it gives us a gorgeous look into the Doctor's pain. God damn, David Tennant is a great actor. Like, fuck it, look at this face. Look at this face. You can see the years of pain the Doctor has suffered through all of this expression. God damn, I could live in this moment. I especially love how Donna outwits the other Doctor. She's just rambling on about herself, basically talking about nothing, and then just blurts out, "Where's your tie?" And the other doctor is just so just baffled by what is even happening that he doesn't even register. He's like, what? It reminds me of Captain Jack Sparrow. She just acts like she's so stupid, but she's so clever. God, I miss companions who could just, function without the Doctor. Speaking of thinking for themselves, I love the superstition and truth moment where the Doctor just pours a line of salt on the ground and confuses the other versions of themselves, which makes these things stand out so much more than other creatures that they have gone up against, because they're not just dumb creatures, they're actually learning from the Doctor and Donna through their adrenaline, as they find out later. This scene with the salt works so well because at first they're just confused. They think that it's a lie, but they don't know for sure, so that their other Donna just starts counting the salt. But then there's an incredible moment where she realizes that it's a bunch of bullshit and then just blows the salt away. And then the real Donna and Doctor are like, fucking Jesus Christ. And this leads them back to the control room. And I really cannot sing David Tennant's praises enough because this scene is so entertaining. This boy has mad ADHD and it's hilarious to watch because it's so relatable. And this man just makes it so entertaining, especially once the other Doctor has gotten smart enough to follow the Doctor's thoughts and he tries acting as if he doesn't know anything. So once the Doctor figures out that the ship is a slow bomb, he speeds it up and they have a pretty intense chase down the hallway. The countdown really makes it intense. See what I mean, Russ? If you had have added the countdown into the last episode, it would have made it more intense. You literally proved my point. But I think we reach another somewhat contrived moment where the TARDIS comes back. Because when the TARDIS ran away, the Doctor explains it by saying that the TARDIS has a feature where it can detect hostile action, which he turned off, but it switched back on. And once it detects the hostile action, it just runs away until the hostile action ends. But the hostile action hasn't ended, because granted, the other two versions of the Doctor and Donna are running out of time, they're about to blow up, sure. But the ship being a bomb technically makes that hostile action, which would mean that the TARDIS wouldn't come back. But, that aside, it does lead to a really cool shot of the TARDIS flying back in. In fact, all the visuals look incredible in this episode. The exterior shot of the ship's captain, the other Doctor and Donna, the TARDIS, it all looks
fantastic.
And then we get the most perfect conclusion to a beautiful episode with the final ever scene shot with Bernard Cribbins. A moment of silence for this beautiful man. I love this scene so very much. Just the look on Wilf's face made the scene just so worth it. And then David's look when he sees Wilfred.
Wilfred Mott. Oh, now I feel better.
Genuine love for both of these men. I cannot complain about this moment at all. It's so good. I love Bernard Cribbins. I love David Tennant with him. It's such a beautiful moment.
You've got to do something, Doctor. The whole world's coming to an end.
But what I do have complaints about is the second last special of 2023, The Giggle. Because this episode was their Pandora's box, it had limitless potential, and ultimately I feel like it squanders some of that potential with the direction they chose to take it in. Because one of the main threads that have been following these specials throughout is why did David Tennant's face come back? Other than the obvious reason of it being a 60th special, the story consistently begs that question. And with the return of the Toymaker, the theories inside everyone's brains just exploded. Because they chose a character that can literally bend reality to his will simply by thinking it, and because time has no effect on the Toymaker, it was natural to see the potential of the Toymaker forcing the Doctor to regenerate back into David Tennant and then just be messing with him the entire time. Or even before that, without the Doctor even realizing. Which of course led to the hope that Russell would then decanonize the Timeless Children storyline, and I'm kind of split on this. For one, I am super annoyed that Chibnall's crap did get canonized, but I also kind of respect Russell for trying to stick with it. There have been so many franchises, from Terminator to the X-Men, where they have taken the former stories and just deleted them from the timeline, sometimes without explanation. I'm looking at you, Terminator. And I think it's a mark of a great writer, which we all know Russell T Davies is, to take a concept that is good on its own, but in a shitty environment, and then just make pure gold out of it. Which Russell T Davies has kind of started with Wild Blue Yonder and The Giggle, and as it turns out, The Church of Ruby Road. But that being said, The Giggle itself is a fine episode, if a bit underwhelming. The performances are top-notch as always, with the inclusion of Neil Patrick Harris being added to the cast. Why has it taken so long for this man to join Doctor Who? The man fits right in. Neil and David's performances really make it feel like these are old foes with a long history.
Are you not gepleased, Herr Doctor, to see me again after so many years?
I hope Neil comes back at some point in the future. He is a fantastic inclusion in the Doctor Who universe, and I love how the Doctor uses the Toymaker's rules against him. When the Toymaker wins, the Doctor's just like, well, best of 3, bitch.
And you know, 2 players are bound by one inviolable rule. Best of 3. Best of 3.
I adore the genuine look of disappointment on the Toymaker's face. He sells it so beautifully. And then comes the end, where I am the most torn. I think the idea of bi-generation is one of the dumbest ideas that RTD could have come up with, because it's unnecessary. The conclusion of why the Doctor regenerated into his old face is just that he's just worn out and he needs to take a break. I get that his character has been through so much over the last several years, several thousand years, but like, if you wanted the Doctor to just have a break, you could have just had him take a break. You could have just been like, yeah, he spent like 10,000 years sleeping on fucking Pandora. It's a simple thing that you could have written into the story, like, oh, like David Tennant's Doctor just needs to take a break from saving the universe for several years. Okay, have him just have a break, and then just like, you could even make it like he's having a break. He waits until this particular body gets old, wears out, and then regenerates into Ncuti Gatwa. It would work perfectly that way. It makes no difference either way. So I don't know why you had to go with this way, where the Doctor just splits off into 2 versions of himself, where Ncuti Gatwa's version is just a future version. Like, the implications of this are ridiculously convoluted, and I'm just tired of them just adding rules to regeneration. Like, I'm sick of it, because the Timeless Children was so recent, and bi-generation, it just didn't need to happen. You didn't need to make it this way. He could have just regenerated into Ncuti Gatwa after making him take a break. You could have just done it either way. And if you wanted Ncuti and David to meet, you could have done that just by having Ncuti Gatwa's Doctor come back in time and just be like, hey, I'm here to help you deal with the Toymaker. Easy done. You fixed your problem. It's all good. We can do this. Let's go, team. It would be a similar situation with Peter Capaldi 10 years ago when he was in the 50th anniversary. He came back to help everybody. But as it stands, I do like Ncuti Gatwa's first introduction as the Doctor. It's very nice. It's not the best, but it works very well.
Yeah, myth, Mel. What do you think?
I think you're beautiful.
Still beautiful.
Yeah.
So after they beat the Toymaker in a really somewhat fun climax, David Tennant's Doctor, the 14th Doctor, has a really lovely scene with the Noble family, which basically his Doctor is retired, his Doctor is off the grid. And then Ncuti Gatwa's Doctor, he's in the TARDIS, he's playing with his stuff, and then he He's off in the universe. He runs off, and he's the one that we're following from now on. The 15th Doctor, the official introduction of the 15th Doctor. And this leads us to the Church of Ruby Road, which is probably the most average of the 4 specials. Which is really sad, because Ncuti Gatwa and Millie Gibson are a fantastic pairing. The two of them are brilliant together.
But what did you do that for? Who sees a ladder and just pops on? A ladder in the sky, and you thought, yeah, I'll give that a go, babe. They've got the baby!
All of their interactions are basically relegated to the middle of the episode. The opening and the close of the episode are perhaps where the episodes become the most unengaging. For me, at least. I love seeing the Doctor living it up in a club. I love seeing Ruby being targeted by the goblins. And I love it when the Doctor and Ruby meet in the club. It really shows that the Doctor still has his magnetism. One conversation with Ruby and she is already in awe with him. It really reminds me of the Snowman where the Doctor meets Clara, and after one conversation she's already running after him.
And she doesn't even have the name Doctor. What 2 words?
Doctor? Doctor who?
His magnetic personality just draws people in, even without him really trying. And this episode introduces us to Ruby Sunday, a child that was abandoned at a church on a Sunday. That's a coincidence. Which is a neat parallel to the Doctor himself with the whole Timeless Children storyline. I still can't believe that we're sticking with this stupid storyline, but it does make a nice connection between Ruby and the Doctor. And it's understandable why the Doctor would be so interested. But I think this episode really starts working for me when Ruby goes home and starts interacting with her adopted family. I love that for once, Russell T Davies has made a mother that isn't the most annoying person on the planet. I love Jackie. I love Sylvia. But they really are the most annoying people on the planet. And do not even get me started on Francine. And this relationship leads to probably one of my favorite scenes in the episode where Ruby gets taken in the past and we get to see the impact her life has had on Carla, which actually has a neat parallel to Amy when she was crying after Rory was taken and doesn't understand why, doesn't even remember why. I especially love how this scene in particular is patient, not to the point of boredom, but patient enough with that actor to do his thing. I just love how they hold on Ncuti's face for a few seconds to let his rage and sadness boil through. But this all leads to a climax that I really don't like. And for a few reasons. Reason 1, the Doctor, above all else, is a man of words, which means he's also a man of second chances. And the fact that he doesn't even attempt to talk to the goblins, and instead just impales the Goblin King on a spike, really annoys me. And reason number 2, the goblins themselves. This is really disappointing because RTD was really hyping these creatures up, so much so that they released the Goblin song early, which absolutely slaps, by the way. That song is incredible. But we basically learn literally nothing about these creatures at all. If you don't already have a pre-established knowledge of goblins beforehand, then you will literally have no idea what the fuck is going on at all. And the reason I know this is because that's what happened to me. I literally had no idea what the hell was going on or why any of these creatures were doing what they were doing. I really have only seen goblins in one bit of material before, and that's The Hobbit. I know that they're mischievous, and I know they like causing trouble, but I didn't know they had a Goblin King they worshipped, and I really don't know much else about them. So, the goblins themselves in this episode are beyond confusing. And from what I understand, they didn't really do much with the lore either. So, they're really a nothing antagonist. They're just something for the Doctor to take down. Which is very disappointing. Because up until this point, in every one of these specials, there's been an antagonist that has been very memorable. You've had the Not Things, you've had the Meep, and you've had the Toymaker. All 3 of these villains have been quite interesting. And these goblins are literally nothing. But I don't mind if Doctor Who wants to start tackling mythology. I mean, Santa Claus is literally a real thing, so it's not a huge leap for the Doctor to start tackling goblins. But at least do something cool with them. And reason number 3 for why this ending doesn't work that well for me, the hints to the future. I haven't really touched on this throughout this video yet, but there have been several hints towards the future that have been completely unnecessary. The Meep literally goes out of its way to give some forced foreshadowing about the boss. Wild Blue Yonder has a really out of place scene with Sir Isaac Newton where the Doctor and Donna accidentally changed the word from gravity to mavity, and the giggle is literally filled with them. The toy maker makes a reference to the Master, which... Please, I'm begging you, don't bring the Master back. Don't bring the Cybermen back. Don't bring the Daleks back. It's really getting on my nerves. I really just want to see some new villains. They have been used to death. Stop bringing them back. The Toymaker even makes a reference to the One Who Waits and the Toymaker's Legions. And then we have the Church of Ruby Road, which has this lady who could be anyone from the Doctor's past, from Susan to the Rani to the Master herself. Don't know, don't care. It really didn't need to be here, but you had enough of a mystery box with the lady who left Ruby on the church doorstep. You didn't need anything else. It would be like if we went in to something like Series 3, and instead of just having little references to Harold Saxon, all of a sudden they're like going into like Time Lord mythology. They're like, oh my god, there's like the One Who Waits, there's the boss, there's all these people, and it's all in one episode. Like the first episode really just hammers that home, and you're literally sitting there being like, why the fuck are we talking about all of this extra shit when we are not focusing on the actual story in the episode itself? It's cool to have references, yes, but those need to be the icing on the cake, not the cake as a whole. It's really cool in series like Series 3, where in the first episode, The Runaway Bride, the one and only reference we get for the future is a blink and you'll miss it line about a guy in a tank talking about Harold Saxon. You would not even know it's there until after you started watching the rest of the series, and they're starting to talk about Saxon, and then you go back and you're like, oh, this guy was talking about Saxon too, what the fuck? And then it keeps going, and then all of a sudden Martha's family starts getting into Harold Saxon and his bunch, and all of a sudden you're like, why the fuck does this Harold Saxon guy have it out for the Doctor? He literally is talking about the Doctor as if the Doctor is like some evil entity that's going to bring down hell upon this planet. And then you get to the second to the last episode after the Master has come back, and then he goes back to Earth, and then you realize that it was the Master the whole time, and you're like, of course! Ding, 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 of course it's the Master! Fuck, I didn't... That's awesome! What the hell? That's so sick! And then you go back, and then and then it just makes more sense. You're like, oh, the Master's trying to fuck with the Doctor. Fair enough. There you go. What the... Excellent. Excellent stuff, sir. You did a good job with that one. It's enough of a mystery box to keep me engaged. I do want to know where this is going, but I'm not altogether invested because there's just been so much that has just been thrown at me that I'm like, pull it back, Russ. Pull it back. We've got enough. And to conclude everything, I am looking forward to the next series of Doctor Who. It's the first time in a long time where I have actually been excited to see what is coming. And I cannot wait to see the Doctor and Ruby go on their adventures in the next series. Thank you for watching.